John Wick is back and deadly as ever. Let's talk John Wick Chapter 4. Hey everyone, this is David Stark from Watcher Pass. Today I'm here to talk to you about John Wick Chapter 4. The latest entry in the John Wick franchise is coming to theaters on March 24th, 2023. And my hot take is, look, I think you should watch it. Look, I'm a John Wick fan. I like all the John Wick movies, even John Wick 3. And John Wick Chapter 4 is a very good movie. It, has some flaws, but all John Wick movies have some flaws. What I do love is that it knows what it does great, and it does it very well. The action is fantastic. The kind of style is wonderful. There is everything over the top. They kind of go bigger and bigger in each movie, and John Wick Chapter 4 is no difference. So overall, I definitely think you should watch it, especially if you like this series. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the film, a few things I liked, a few things I didn't like, and go into the ending. So as you can imagine, there will be spoilers in the ending section. If you don't want to know what happens in the film, I would turn it off when I get to the ending section. I will be very clear that when that happens, and before that, I will keep it vague. So in John Wick Chapter 4, you have John Wick continuing to kind of flee for his life. He has gained the ire of the High Table, the kind of ruling council that kind of controls this whole shadow world that John Wick and the other assassins and people live in. And they are kind of trying to hunt him down. So in order to kind of overcome this, John hatches a plan to get his freedom, but at what cost? So things I liked about this movie. The first, hey, look, I love the style. I love the John Wick style. I think it's a great meld of like classic medieval themes with kind of a modern sensibility. I just really love how like everything has this old and new feel to it. Everyone's in like suits, but a lot of times they fight with like older weapons. A lot of the decorations will be Renaissance or medieval style decorations. And this film is no exception. It kind of goes all in on that. And especially at the start, there is a really long sequence that I loved. And I will go into that next as the second thing. That's the second thing I love. Tokyo, like a large part of this film takes place in Tokyo. Look, I'm a little biased. I like Tokyo a lot. I think it's a fascinating place. It's definitely part of my culture. So I love Tokyo, and I love that John Wick kind of spent a lot of time there. And the Tokyo scenes have that same melding, and it's perfect. You've got like feudal Japan imagery with the neon jungle that is Tokyo, and I just loved every second of it. You had like samurai armor and classic paintings and cherry blossoms with neon signs and guns mixed with bows. It was just a fantastic scene and definitely was a highlight of the movie for me. The third thing I loved is the music. There is a good, just kind of like industrial electric soundtrack that kind of helps to give John Wick a modern vibe. And it really melds with kind of the overall style perfectly. You get that modern feel with the music, but you also get a good amount of like upbeat tempos when the action is happening. You get a nice kind of soundtrack for the craziness that is going on. It really kind of helps to amplify everything that is happening when John Wick is doing the action, which is the fourth thing I love, the action. Look, John Wick does action fantastically, and this is no exception. Everything is over the top. Everything is crazy. The fight scenes are bigger. There are more bodies. Everything is just kind of like dialed up for this film and for like John Wick in general, and they just kind of go all in this one. The choreography scenes are pretty crazy. There's large fight scenes. There's a lot going on. What I also like is there's a good variety of weapons. It's not the same weapon over and over, although John Wick does seem to favor the pistol. You get all sorts of different weapons. You've got like a shotgun in here. You've got swords. You've got bows. You've got nunchucks at one point. Like you've got a whole bunch of different types of weapons that are being used. And so I did like that the action is big, intense, and it has some good variety. And the last thing I loved is Donnie Yen. Look, Donnie Yen is in this film. He is a great addition. I loved his character. I loved kind of his overall attitude in this. I loved kind of the way that his character was merged into the world, and just Donnie Yen adds another dimension to this. And in an action film, we've got one of the best, martial arts action stars in the business. It kind of amplifies everything. So all that being said, look, I definitely think you should watch it. The things I didn't like are very minor and not really anything you should really be concerned about. But the things I didn't love as much about this film are, first, it's a little bit long. And that's not to say that it kind of feels long. It feels long at times, but I don't really know if there was anything they could cut out. It's long because you have these big set piece action sequences that go on and on and on. And part of that feels a little bit too much, but part of it is also just the wonder of John Wick, where you have him taking on wave after wave after wave of enemies. And I don't think I would have cut any of the action sequences. Maybe they could have been shortened, but then you would have kind of lost some of the grandeur. So it is a little bit long. It's a 2 hour and 50-minute movie. It definitely kind of fills that with plenty of stuff going on. So just kind of keep that in mind. I don't, it's not a big complaint because, like I said, I enjoyed the movie throughout. I didn't really look at my watch much during the film. So it's just a minor point, but just something that kind of like to keep in mind. And the last thing I didn't love as much, and again, this is minor, is look, I love Keanu. Keanu is fantastic. He seems like a wonderful person. I would love to meet him. I'd love to hang out with him. I don't love his delivery in John Wick. It's a very kind of like dry, uh, monotone-ish delivery, and that was just kind of amplified in this film for some reason. I don't really think I noticed it in the previous ones. Maybe I did, and I just kind of like looked past it. But it does feel like when Keanu does his delivery, it's not great. And again, that's not really a big deal because he doesn't speak that much in this film. He doesn't speak much in John Wick anyways. He kind of lets his actions speak louder than his words. But just something to keep in mind. It's kind of tough when you have like Keanu Reeves and Ian McShane having a conversation, and Ian McShane is such a fantastic actor, and it definitely feels like there is a like an imbalance there. So that being said, I definitely think you should watch John Wick 4. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a lot of fun. I, was definitely laughing and kind of cringing at times. Not cringing because it was bad, cringing because of some of the action that was happening and some of the things that were happening to John Wick and the people that were trying to get John Wick. So definitely check it out in theaters. It's in theaters on March 24th, 2023. I'm going to go into the ending, so there will be spoilers here. If you do not want to know what happens in the film, and you probably don't, there are a lot of surprises that happen, I would turn it off now. So, like I said, John Wick is trying to get his freedom, but what has happened is the High Table, which are, I guess, 12 different families that make up this world, they each have like a member on the High Table. The High Table has kind of given their power to this character, the Marquis, who has made it his mission to hunt down John Wick and is kind of doing it at any expense. He wants to destroy John Wick and destroy any idea of John Wick, and so he basically goes after anyone that harbors John Wick or that even kind of like thinks about John Wick. So the first thing he does is he takes out the Continental in New York because they kind of failed to stop John Wick. They let him get away, and so he closes them down and blows up the Continental. And after the hotel is blown up, the Marquis kills Charon, the concierge of the hotel, rather than killing Winston, the manager. So that kind of starts this off on a bad foot. And the Marquis also calls in this new assassin, Caine, played by Donnie Yen, who is a blind, like, super assassin. The Marquis kind of forces him to pursue John Wick by threatening his daughter. And so now we have a new assassin on the hunt. John is no longer in New York. He has made his way to Japan to stay in the Japanese equivalent of the Continental. This is the Osaka Continental, and he is staying with a friend who is shielding him from the overall craziness that is going on. And as you can imagine, a friend who is defying the table is probably not long for this world. And the table comes to this hotel. There's a big, giant fight. It was fantastic. I loved this fight. It was so elaborate, so kind of like over the top, and it had all this great Japanese imagery. So the table tries to get John Wick. The manager says no because the manager is a friend of John Wick's and kind of knows that and kind of wants to protect his friend. And that leads to a whole lot of death. And basically the theme of this movie is like everything John Wick touches dies. Like literally almost everyone that he speaks to, hangs out with, looks at, dies in this film. So there's a big fight between the table troops and the Osaka Continental troops. I loved this because like the table troops were kind of more modern. They had like Italian suits on and guns, and then there were at some point like fully armored soldiers came in, and the Osaka troops were using like traditional Japanese weapons. They were like using great bows and swords and things like that. And it was a nice, again, like kind of contrast and kind of like a nice texture to this fight. But during the fight, the friend, the manager of the Osaka hotel, who was shielding John, gets killed by Caine. It's actually kind of unnecessary because Caine is kind of wondering where John is. They have a fight. Caine basically like disables the manager and is walking away. And the manager like continues to fight. And so Caine has to like kill him to stop the fight. So I love this because Caine seems bored this entire time. He doesn't want to be here. He doesn't want to do the table's bidding. And he also doesn't want to kill the manager. Like he's trying not to. And I do love that, like, his character is so kind of like conflicted, because on the one hand he hates the table, he hates like doing this, but on the other hand, like, he wants to save his daughter and kind of has to do this. So again, that was this. I think Donnie Yen was a fantastic addition to this. I really like kind of pretty much every scene he was in. So now John's trying to figure out what to do next. Next up, we are in New York, and Winston is there, and Winston talks to John. Somehow, John seems to be able to travel the world. Somehow, even though he's being pursued by every mercenary in the world, he's able to like go from New York to Japan and back to New York, where he meets Winston, and Winston kind of plants this seed in his head. Like, the way that he can get this done is by challenging the Marquis to a duel using the old rules. These are like old ancient traditions where someone that is a member of like the high table families can challenge another one, and it's a way to kind of solve disputes without leading to a lot of bloodshed. Only problem is John Wick is no longer a member of any of the families. His ticket was torn up in, I think, chapter 2. I think it's probably John Wick chapter 2, by his, I guess, Russian family. And so he is not a member of any of the families. And so he has to get his membership back. He has to become a member of a family first, and then he can challenge him. Also, we earlier we were introduced to a new kind of assassin protagonist in this film. He calls himself Nobody. He is also known as like Tracker. He's this really skilled like tracker hunter who is trying to kind of retire by taking out John Wick, although he is kind of conflicted because he wants John Wick's bounty to go up, so oftentimes he helps him. But I think ultimately he wants to take out John Wick for the retirement. He also has a sweet dog that is kind of a nice addition, because you always want a dog in a John Wick movie. And now there's a dog who helps to fight and plays a key role in this film. John travels to Berlin now. Again, somehow manages to travel to Berlin, meets up with his old family, finds out that the head of the family that he was going to talk to was killed after John Wick took out one of the elders in the high table and became like essentially a persona non grata. So the new head of John's ex-family like basically makes him an offer, a very painful offer, but an offer that if he takes out the person who took out the original head, I think his name is Piotr, then they will make him a member of the family. So John Wick does what John Wick does. He goes, he takes him out. It is a very involved fight. It is a very large fight. Both Caine and Nobody are there. It is like a fun, intense overall scene. It's really weird though, because they're fighting in a nightclub, and so you've got this like fighting in death while people are dancing around them, and sometimes they are oblivious to what's going on. Sometimes they see it, but they keep dancing. So, but again, you have a big action sequence where John Wick takes out a ton of people and eventually takes out the person that killed Piotr. I believe his name was Killer. I think it was played by Scott Adkins, which was a fun kind of role for him. So now John has done it. He has become a member of the family. They issue the challenge. He challenges the Marquis. They go through this whole sequence of figuring out what the challenge will be, like what the weapons will be. The specifics of this duel to decide everything is going to be at sunrise. It's going to be located at this church. I think it was called the Sacre-Cœur, but I didn't catch it. It's some sort of church in Paris. The weapons are dueling pistols. They're going to be at 30 paces and shoot, and then go 20 paces and shoot, and then go to 10 paces and shoot. And eventually, someone's not going to be standing. There's going to be no quarter, and in a surprise at the end, the Marquis nominates Caine to be his like stand-in. And so now John Wick and Caine have to essentially duel to decide this whole fate. But the duel is not until sunrise. John Wick has to survive until sunrise. As you can imagine, with someone as powerful as like the Marquis, who has the entire table behind him, John Wick has a very long time before sunrise. They put out a call. They up his bounty. They keep upping it to insane numbers, and that results in an insane number of people trying to fight him. So John has to fight pretty much everyone, and this does let them put in a pretty sweet car chase scene where John takes out some of the assassins, grabs a car, and gets to drive around Paris in a muscle car doing crazy stuff, and then drive around on a motorcycle killing people, doing crazy stuff. It doesn't look like he's going to make it on time. He has to be there at sunrise. If he's not there at sunrise, he forfeits. And not only he dies, but his second, who ends up being Winston, will also be killed. So John has an impossible task, as with all of his tasks. He gets there, and then the Marquis guards come in and try to fight him. They put him all the way down the stairs, which is a fun and also kind of like physically stressful scene when he's almost to the church. and then the guards come and like fight him all the way down to the bottom of the stairs. He has to fight his way back up. It is another intense sequence that maybe could have been shorter, but it's all the action sequences are kind of important to the overall story. So John eventually makes it to the church with the help of Caine. Caine actually comes in and helps him after he gets all the way down to the bottom of the stairs. He comes to help him get back up. So Caine is an old friend of John's, and he definitely kind of wants to help him out, even though he is like bound to eventually kill him because of the contract. So they make it to the church. The duel happens. They start at 30 paces. Boom. Caine grazes John on like the arm. John shoots Caine in the shoulder. They go 20 paces. Boom. Caine shoots John in the arm. John shoots Caine in the side. So neither are doing great. Caine seems to be in worse position. They get to 10 paces. They fire. Caine shoots John in the stomach, and John falls over. The Marquis sees this and like calls an audible and says like, I demand like the final. I think it was like, I demand the final satisfaction. He wants to take over and do the final shot now that John is like injured and on the ground. So in his hubris, he takes the pistol, loads around, comes up to John, and is getting ready to shoot him. And that's when Winston kind of laughs at him and says, John didn't fire his shot, because John didn't. Caine fired it, hit John in like the stomach, knocked him down. John still has his bullet. So when the Marquis approaches, John aims, fires in the head, Marquis down. John is finally free. And with the Marquis down, with the Marquis dead, Caine is also free. So the result of this duel is that Caine is free. His daughter is free. They are both kind of like out of the table's influence. John is also free. And Winston is kind of reinstated as the head of the Continental, and his hotel is going to be rebuilt. He's going to be reinstated as the manager of the hotel. So everything seems to be great. The duel is over. But John is not really in great condition. So he asks Winston to take him home, which you're like, okay, great. Like he's going to go back to New York. He heads down the stairs, sits down, and that's when he kind of keels over and appears to die. And the next scene we see are Winston and the Bowery King at his grave. He is laid next to his wife, Helen. I believe her headstone says like loving wife. His says loving husband. That's what he wanted on his headstone. Strangely, no dog headstone, but you know what? Maybe that's for later. Winston says farewell, and it fades. So apparently John Wick is over. One thing I kept thinking like throughout this film is like, everything he touches dies. Like all of the friends that he like had help him seem to die. Everything about John Wick is death. And I know he's like fighting for a cause and fighting for like, what is right, but at some point he seems to kill a lot of people. A lot of his friends seem to die, and he still just ends up dead. He was able to topple some aspects of the table. He was able to kind of like take out some of the people that had wronged him, but in the end, I don't really know if his kind of journey was that successful. He still died. A lot of his friends died. It kind of seems like if he would have maybe like, I don't know, turned himself in earlier, then more people would have survived. But that would have been a much less interesting movie. So that is John Wick Chapter 4. There's also a stinger, a fantastic stinger. Definitely wait to see it. So at the end of the credits, it's at the very end after all the credits, you see Akira, who was the manager of the Osaka Continental's daughter / concierge of that hotel. Her father, you'll remember, was killed by Caine, and she swore revenge on Caine. She said basically, John, you have to kill him or I will. Remember, John didn't actually kill him. John and him dueled to almost a draw, except John died after. So you see Caine in Paris. He's walking towards his daughter, who is playing the violin. He's been like waiting for this moment when you could finally see her again, when they were both safe. He has some flowers. He's finally going to see her. And then you see Akira walking the other way towards him, wearing like a hood, and she pulls out a knife. And that's the end. That's the end of John Wick, Chapter 4. So where do we go from here? It seems like John Wick is dead. It seems like that would be the case, but I wouldn't put it past them to like say that he didn't actually die and they put up a gravestone so he could finally live in peace, and then maybe there will be another movie after. Or I could see them do like a prequel, right? Like maybe some sort of John Wick prequel. Probably wouldn't have Keanu Reeves, but maybe some of the characters could come back, and like you could have a story of how John Wick became the Baba Yaga and maybe originally got his way out. I can see them doing that. Or they could maybe continue this like Caine Akira fight and have that be like a new spin-off. Who knows? But that is John Wick Chapter 4. It's in theaters on March 24th, 2023. Definitely think you should check it out. And thanks so much for watching. If you liked this review, please like and subscribe to this channel. It helps me out a lot. Make sure all my new content goes straight to you. Thank you.